board. So HR is scheduled to do that PowerPoint presentation. Again, it's a great program that we're doing to try and infuse some new blood into the county and attract some other workers to our pool here. State Senate Leadership Caucus, I'm sure most of you are aware, but there was a change with the recent failure of the proposition at the state level. And so Senator Darrell Steinberg has been selected to succeed Senator Don Parada, and I've given you a little more notes on that. And then finally, this Homeland Security grant, we are still in a hold status with the Homeland Security. They're now talking about we're going to have to hire an independent auditor, go back to 2002. This goes back to the Mesa issue and that whole affair. So staff is continuing to work on that. It's consuming a tremendous amount of time because we basically have to go back and document all of our asset purchases. We have to verify where those assets are and do we presently have those in our possession. And a lot of those assets are in the hands of both the fire districts and other agencies. So this is going to be a real problem for us in the long term because HHSA, the public health staff, had provided funding to the Gang of Five for these Homeland Security grants, and we have been told that the 15% that had previously been claimed as a planning activity is not an eligible activity, and the number is only 3% that can be claimed. So there's a huge hole in the budget for staffing for these Homeland Security grants, and that's something our office will be working with the Gang of Five, how we're going to not only cover the current year's shortfall, but who is going to provide staffing in the long term for the Homeland Security grants, because it does take quite a bit of staff time depending upon how you do those programs. So that concludes my report. If you have any questions.
Mr. Mitchell, I do have a question in regards to that last item. The audit. I believe in the previous arrangement of Mesa, the financial documentation, etc., was held at the City of Ukiah. Is that not correct?
That is correct, but it probably was not explained to you very well at the time the board took that action, because although the county can transfer the fiscal responsibility to the City of Ukiah under those terms, the county would always maintain ultimate liability for any decisions that are made for that organization. So the financial transactions were handled by the city. However, any costs that are disallowed will become costs that will be charged back to the County of Mendocino.
And the cost of the audit also.
Cost of the audit. And, you know, I would say to you, you know, there's a lot of similar parallels. Proposition 40 under the Park Monlax, we do a lot of, typically we do these joint use agreements and we go forward and we do agreements with other agencies, but you always have to be careful about who holds the ultimate financial responsibility for when the audits are happening.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Any comments from the board in regards to the report? Okay. Let's move to the legislative and fiscal report from the CEO's office. Mr. Kaler?
I just wanted to report to the board, Supervisor Smith and myself returned this weekend from talks in Washington, D.C. with a number of legislative staff. Thought one of our best meetings was with the Senate professional staff for Subcommittee on Appropriations for Water and Energy. We had a rather lengthy discussion, very candid discussion with where we stand on appropriations for our two Corps of Engineers projects. We also had some very good meetings with Senator Feinstein and Boxer's office, as well as Congressman Thompson's office. We've come back with a number of ideas and things that I'm currently pursuing in terms of collecting additional letters of support, especially related to the Cow Mountain project. We're going to be seeking some letters from the Blue Ribbon Commission supporting the access to federal lands appropriation. We're also have some, I've on the phone this morning with the Point Arena Lighthouse project, and directing and giving them assistance and direction in terms of letters of support for that project. So I think it was a very fruitful 2 days in Washington. I know that I came away with a better idea of what our representatives in Washington are looking for from us to help them with our appropriation ideas. So with that, in terms of the state front, I think Tom covered it very well. There's going to be further shakeup in state leadership as a result of the most recent election and the failure of term limits to pass. We have not started our state watch list yet. We are still waiting for the deadline for bill introduction, and at that point then we will be really concentrating on looking at which bills at the state level that we're going to be paying attention to. CSAC's legislative conference, I believe, is going to be on the 21st and 22nd of May. And prior to, last time I talked to the board, I was at a meeting at CSAC of legislative coordinators, and the idea is that the legislative conference will become closer to the time that the May revise happens in Sacramento. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions to the board members. I don't know if Kendall, did you have a chance to talk about the trip to Washington from your perspective yet?
No.
Not yet.
No.
Okay.
If you want to chime in now on that item, or you want to wait?
Sure.
till
Sure.
Supervisor?
Since Mr. Kaler's here, I'll elaborate a little bit on his the reference he made to meeting with I think it was Mr. Cockrell from the Senate side on the Energy and Water staff. He's a very seasoned person. We've met with him before in the past. He's worked for both the Republican majority and the Democratic majority, and he's a very sharp person. So we, as Mr. Kaler said, we had a very candid discussion about the appropriations, and it was shared by him as well as reiterated by his comparable or counterpart in the House Ledge staff in Energy and Water, that this is going to be yet again a very, very difficult year. And as an example, what they were talking about in Energy and Water is that from the President's newly released executive budget, there's approximately, just in the Energy and Water component, $1 billion spread from what the President is stating he is asking for and what was actually allocated, dollars that went out the door last year for projects when everything was said and done and what they were able to agree on. There's a $1 billion separation. So that is giving them pause, because that's not a difficult situation to remedy, just to maintain the status quo, not to mention any new infrastructure dollars that might be being requested. So they kind of reference that as one of the examples of what we're probably looking at. Speculation in terms of the election. I mean, it was an interesting time to be there, because today is the Chesapeake primary, or the Potomac primary, as it's often referred to, Virginia, D.C., and Maryland. So there was a lot of politics in the air back there, just as we had concluded our, the Super Tuesday California component. But we asked questions of staff of what, speculations in terms of the election, and really the response that we got was that not so much that it doesn't matter, but that the serious debt situation that the country's in is not going to be rectified, as we would all know, anytime soon. And so they see more years of constraint and difficult times for appropriations in the years ahead. So the election doesn't, in the minds of those that are sort of managing the flow of revenue, it's sort of business as usual in terms of what they're going to have to work with. And there's lots of speculation and ideas circulating about how the budget may change, but everyone really mentioned the tightness with which it's going to be probably handled this year and where we're going. So it wasn't enthusiastic